Folks, my clients have been working so hard this week to break their habit of being defensive when they communicate with their loved ones. I thought I would spend a couple minutes talking a little bit about defensiveness. What is it when we talk about defensiveness in communicating? And when do we do it? Is it helpful? And how do we stop it? So, this is not to be confused with self protection. Um, Defensiveness is a response to a verbal attack. If it's an actual attack, like an actual physical attack, that's different. Flee if you can, fight if you can't, do whatever you got to do to defend yourself to stay safe. I'm not talking about this. Uh, physical safety. What I'm talking about is a verbal attack. So when somebody verbally attacks us or we perceive somebody to be verbally attacking us, we defend ourselves. We get defensive. And it doesn't help. It just doesn't help because what's happening in that moment is somebody's hurling an attack or somebody's saying something that we're interpreting as an attack when it's not. And we're telling that person all the reasons why we did what we did. What we're not saying out loud, but also telling the person is, I'm not listening to you and I'm not trying to understand you. All I'm doing is thinking about me right now and I'm trying to get you to understand me. The problem is when people are in a situation like that of going back and forth, of defending and insulting, or defending and really trying to get somebody to hear, that's not a healthy conversation and it's going to go nowhere other than downhill. So what are the steps that we can do to break that defensive cycle in communicating? The first step is to recognize that you're being defensive, to take a step back and say out loud, I'm being defensive, to remember when we get defensive. I'm being defensive because I'm feeling attacked. Then ask yourself, is this an actual verbal attack, such as I'm being insulted or I'm being verbally threatened? Or is this a perceived attack, such as somebody's trying to get me to understand how they're feeling, somebody's trying to get me to understand their experience? If it's an actual attack, if someone's saying you're a jerk and calling you names and insulting you, then set a boundary. Don't defend yourself. Set a boundary and say, I can see you're upset. I want to have this conversation, and I will only have this conversation if you can talk with me without insulting me and calling me names. Please let me know when you are able to talk with me without calling me names and insulting me, and then we can continue this conversation. That's not defending yourself. That's simply setting a boundary saying, not okay. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay for you to be hurtful. If the attack is perceived, if I think, they're not insulting me, they're not threatening me, they're telling me that what I did made them angry. Instead of me saying all the reasons why I did what I did, even if my reasons were valid, my reasons might have been valid, and I might do it the same way all over again. But instead of defending myself, it would make much more sense for me to say, I hear you. Sometimes that alone gets the person to step back and go, whoa, I was hurt. Because that's what they want. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I understand that you are saying that you are feeling hurt. I hear how angry you are. Gosh, what I did really, really got you angry, didn't it? And Even if you want to go one step further and say, but I had every right to, and I would do it again if I had the opportunity, you don't say that out loud. You don't have to. Not every thought has to be said out loud. In that moment, I see how, just letting the person know, I see how angry you are. Now, how do I get my own self compassion in those moments? I could say to myself, Nikki, you did what you needed to do. You did what you thought was right. I could say that inside my head. I can go to a supportive person in my life, such as a family member, a friend, my own therapist, and I can get the compassion and the support that I need around that situation in that way. But really, it's so hard to not do, and it's so important to understand that defending yourself in that moment is not useful. It's not going to help the conversation go in a healthy direction. Lastly, it takes a really, really long time sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work at all. Sometimes it works fairly quickly, which can be surprising and awesome. But people need to receive compassion in order for them to give it. They need to know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of compassion before they can get to a place where they can give compassion. So if every time someone comes to you and you want to attack, you want to defend yourself, and instead you don't, instead you say, "Gosh, you're so angry. What I did really, really upset you, didn't it?" And not saying all the reasons why you did it, that can really, really help someone to know what it feels like to receive compassion. And that's one little tiny step. It's a huge step in what you're doing, what in the overall picture, but in that moment, it might seem like a really tiny step because you might not notice the difference right away. But that person received it, that person experienced it, and somewhere down the road, whether it's a short distance or a long distance, they might be able to start giving it more and stop defending themselves and stop attacking other people in their conversations. Give it a thought, give it a try, and I'd be interested to hear how it works for you. Take care.